Prophecies of Sister Elena Aiello. Good Friday, April 16, 1954. Upon initiating the usual sufferings, about the hour of 1 p.m., Jesus appeared to me, covered with wounds and bleeding, saying to me, "Behold my child, see to what ends the sins of man have reduced me." The world has lowered itself in overflowing corruption. The governments of the people have risen like demons incarnated, and, while they speak of peace, they prepare for war with the most devastating implements to destroy peoples and nations. Men have become ungrateful to my sacred heart, and abusing my mercy, have transformed the earth into a scene of crime. Numerous scandals are bringing souls to ruin, particularly through the corruption of youth. Stirred up, and unrestrained in the enjoyment of the pleasures of the world, they have degraded their spirit in corruption and sin. The bad example of parents trains the family in scandal and infidelity, instead of virtue and prayer, which is almost dead on the lips of many. Stained and withered is the fountain of faith and sanctity, the home. The wills of men do not change. They live in their obstinacy of sin. More severe are the scourges and plagues to recall them to the way of God, but men still become furious, like wounded beasts, and harden their hearts against the grace of God. The world is no longer worthy of pardon, but only of fire, destruction and death. There must be more prayers and penances from the souls faithful to me, in order to appease the just wrath of God, and to temper the just sentence of punishment, suspended on earth by the intercession of my beloved Mother, who is also the Mother of all men. How sad is my heart to see that men do not convert or respond to so many calls of love and grief, manifested by my beloved Mother to errant men. Roaming in darkness, they continue to live in sin, and further away from God. But the scourge of fire is near, to purify the earth of the iniquities of the wicked. The justice of God requires reparation for the many offenses and misdeeds that cover the earth, and which can no longer be compromised. Men are obstinate in their guilt, and do not return to God. The church is opposed, and the priests are despised because of the bad ones who give scandal. Help me, by suffering, to repair for so many offenses, and thus save at least in part, humanity precipitated in a slough of corruption and death. Make it known to all men that, repentant, they must return to God, and, in doing so, may hope for pardon, and be saved from the just vengeance of a scorned God. In so saying, our Lord God disappeared. Then the Blessed Virgin Mary appeared to me. She was dressed in black, with 7 swords piercing her immaculate heart. Coming closer, with an expression of profound sorrow, and with tears on her cheeks, she spoke to me, saying, "Listen attentively, and reveal to all. My heart is sad for so many sufferings in an impending world in ruin. The justice of our Father is most offended. Men live in their obstinacy of sin. The wrath of God is near. Soon the world will be afflicted with great calamities, bloody revolutions, frightful hurricanes, and the overflowing of streams and the seas. Cry out until the priests of God lend their ears to my voice, to advise men that the time is near at hand, and if men do not return to God with prayers and penances, the world will be overturned in a new and more terrible war. Arms most deadly will destroy peoples and nations. The dictators of the earth, specimens infernal, will demolish the churches and desecrate the Holy Eucharist, and will destroy things most dear. In this impious war, much will be destroyed of that which has been built by the hands of man. Clouds with lightning flashes of fire in the sky and a tempest of fire shall fall upon the world. This terrible scourge, never before seen in the history of humanity, will last 70 hours. Godless persons will be crushed and wiped out. Many will be lost because they remain in their obstinacy of sin. Then shall be seen the power of light over the power of darkness. Be not silent, my daughter, because the hours of darkness, of abandonment, are near. I am bending over the world, holding in suspension the justice of God. Otherwise these things would already have now come to pass. Prayers and penances are necessary because men must return to God and to my Immaculate Heart, the mediatrix of men to God, and thus the world will be at least in part saved. Cry out these things to all, like the very echo of my voice. Let this be known to all, because it will help save many souls, and prevent much destruction in the church and in the world. Message of Good Friday. The Blessed Mother, lovely and majestic, but with tears on her cheeks, spoke. My daughter, it is thy mother speaking to thee, listen attentively, and make known all that I tell thee, because men, in spite of repeated warnings, are not returning to God. They refuse grace, and are not listening to my voice. You must have no doubt about what I am making known to you, because my words are very clear, and you must transmit them to all. Dark and frightful days are approaching. Mankind is obscured by a thick fog, as a result of the many grievous sins, which are well nigh covering the whole earth. Today, more than ever, men are resisting the calls from heaven, and are blaspheming God, while wallowing in the mire of sin. My daughter, look upon my heart pierced by the thorns of so many sins, my face, disfigured by sorrow, my eyes, filled with tears. The cause of such great sadness is the sight of so many souls going to hell, and because the church is wounded, inwardly and outwardly. The rulers of nations make so much ado and speak of peace. But instead, the whole world will soon be at war, and all mankind will be plunged into sorrow, because the justice of God will not be delayed in fulfilling its course, and these events are near. Tremendous will be the upheaval of the whole world, because men, as at the time of the deluge, have lost God's way, and are ruled by the spirit of Satan. Priests must unite by prayers and penance. They must hasten to spread the devotion to the two hearts. The hour of my triumph is close at hand. The victory will be accomplished through the love and mercy of the heart of my Son, and of my Immaculate Heart, the mediatrix between men and God. By accepting this invitation, and by uniting their tears to those of my sorrowful heart, priests and religious will obtain great graces for the salvation of poor sinners. Launch forth into the world a message to make known to all that the scourge is near at hand. The justice of God is weighing upon the world. Mankind, defiled in the mire, soon will be washed in its own blood, by disease, by famine, by earthquakes, by cloudbursts, tornadoes, floods, and terrible storms, and by war. But men ignore all these warnings, and are unwilling to be convinced that my tears, weeping Madonna of Sicily, are plain signs to serve notice that tragic events are hanging over the world, and that the hours of great trials are at hand. If men do not amend their ways, a terrifying scourge of fire will come down from heaven upon all the nations of the world, and men will be punished according to the debts contracted with divine justice. There will be frightful moments for all, because heaven will be joined with the earth, and all the ungodly people will be destroyed. Some nations will be purified, while others will disappear entirely. You are to transmit these warnings to all, in order that the new generation will know that men had been warned in time to turn to God by doing penance, and thus could have avoided these punishments. But when will all this come about? I asked Our Lady. My daughter, answered the Blessed Mother, the time is not far off. When men least expect it, the course of divine justice will be accomplished. My heart is so big for poor sinners, and I make use of every possible means that they may be saved. Look at this mantle, how big it is. If I were not bent over the earth to cover all with my maternal love, the tempest of fire would have already broken upon the nations of the world. Then I exclaimed, My lovely mother, never before have I seen thee with such a large mantle. The Blessed Virgin, holding her arms wide, answered, This is the mantle of mercy for all those who, having repented, come back to my Immaculate Heart. See, the right hand holds the mantle to cover and to save poor sinners, while with the left hand I hold back the divine justice, so that the time of mercy may still be prolonged. To help me in this, I ask that the prayer, Maternal Refuge, be spread as a most useful means to obtain graces and salvation for poor sinners. Say often with your arms crossed, Queen of the universe, mediatrix of men to God, refuge of all our hopes, have mercy on us. Good Friday, April 7th, 1950. Sister Elena Aiello asked our Blessed Mother, Mary, what will become of Italy? Will Rome be saved? The Blessed Virgin answered, in part, by the Pope. The Church will be in travail, but the forces of hell cannot prevail. You must suffer for the Pope and Christ, and thus Christ will be safe on earth, and the Pope, with his redemptive word, will, in part, save the world. The Blessed Virgin Mary then came closer, and with a sad expression, showed me the flames of hell. She said, Satan reigns and triumphs on earth. See how the souls are falling into hell. See how high the flames are, and the souls who fall into them like flakes of snow, looking like transparent embers. How many sparks, how many cries of hate, and of despair. How much pain, see how many priestly souls. Look at the sign of their consecration in their transparent hands. In the palms of their hands the sign of the cross, in more vivid fire, could clearly be seen. What torture, my daughter, in my maternal heart! Great is my sorrow to see that men do not change. The justice of the Father requires reparation, otherwise many will be lost. See how Russia will burn. Before my eyes there extended an immense field covered with flames and smoke, in which souls were submerged as if in a sea of fire. And all this fire, concluded the Blessed Virgin, is not that which will fall from the hands of men, but will be hurled directly from the angels, at the time of the great chastisement or purification that will come upon the earth. Therefore I ask prayers, penance and sacrifice, so I may act as mediatrix for my son in order to save souls. Good Friday, March 23, 1961. The Blessed Virgin Mary speaks. My daughter, the scourge is near. Much is spoken of peace, but all the world will soon be at war, and the streets will be stained with blood. No gleam of light is seen in the world, because men live in the darkness of error, and the enormous weight of sin angers the justice of God. All nations will be punished, because sin has spread all over the world. Tremendous will be the punishments, because man has arrived at an insupportable contest with his God and Father, and has exasperated his infinite goodness. My heart bleeds for Italy also, which will be safe only in part for the Pope. What grief to see the representative of Christ on earth hated, persecuted, outraged. He, who is the spiritual father of the people, the defender of the faith and of truth, whose face, radiant with light, shines upon the world, is greatly hated. He, who personifies Christ on earth, doing good for all, becomes thus outraged with impunity. Many iniquitous and wicked leaders of the people, who live and drag along with them their people outside the laws of God, showing themselves in sheep's clothing, while being rapacious wolves, have ruined society, stirring it up against God and His Church. How can the world be saved from the disaster that is about to crash down upon the misleading nations, if man does not repent of his errors and failings? The only salvation is a complete repentance and return to God, and a true devotion to my Immaculate Heart, particularly in the daily recitation of my Rosary. Once there was the chastisement by water, but if there is not a returning to God, there will come the chastisement by fire, which will cover the streets of the world with blood. My daughter, cry out loudly, and let it be known to all, that, if they do not return to God, Italy too, will only in part be safe for the Pope. My heart of mother, and mediatrix of men, close to the mercy of God, invites, with many manifestations and many signs, the people to penance and to pardon. But they respond with a storm of hate, blasphemies and sacrilegious profanations, as if blinded by an infernal rage. I wish prayers and penance, in order that I may again obtain mercy and salvation for many souls, otherwise they will be lost. Feast of the Immaculate Conception, December 8, 1956. Our Blessed Mother speaks. The world today is honoring me, but my motherly heart is bleeding, because the enemy is at our doors. Men are offending God too much. If I were to show you the number of sins committed in a single day, you would die of horror and sorrow. The sins that distress God the most are those of the souls who should perfume the air with the fragrance of their virtues. Instead, they contaminate, by their sinful lives, those who come near them. The times are grievous. The whole world is in turmoil, because it has become worse than at the time of the deluge. Everything is in suspense, like a thread. When this thread breaks, the justice of God will fall like a thunderbolt and will complete its terrible course of purification. Sister Elena asked, "What will become of Italy?" The Virgin Mary answered, "Italy, my daughter, will be humiliated, purified in blood, and must suffer much, because many are the sins of this beloved country, seat of the Vicar of Christ." You cannot imagine what will happen. In those sad days there will be much anguish and weeping. There will be a great revolution, and streets will be red with blood. The Pope will suffer much, and all this suffering will be like an agony, which will shorten his earthly pilgrimage. His successor will guide the boat in the tempest. However, the punishment of the impious will not be delayed. That day will be most fearful in the world. The earth will tremble, all humanity will be shaken. The wicked and the obstinate will perish in the tremendous severity of the justice of the Lord. Launch at once a message into the world, to advise men to return to God by prayers and penances, and to come with confidence to my Immaculate Heart. My intercession must be shown, because I am the Mother of God, of the just, and of sinners. Through prayer and penance, my mercy will be able to hold back the hand of God's justice. 1959. Our Lord Jesus Christ, dripping with blood and with painful and suffering look, said, "Do you wish to unite with me in my agony? See how much I suffer. The sins of men have reduced me to this. What bitterness is poured into this heart, pierced by many souls, who instead of loving me with sacrifices, and in flight from sinful vanities of the corrupt world, commit much iniquity. Help me to suffer by consoling my grieved heart, and make reparation for the many sins. My beloved bride, if you knew the pain that my heart suffers from the loss of so many souls. Satan travels victorious over all the sinful earth. I need generous souls to appease the outraged justice of the Father, because the world is headed for imminent ruin. The hours of darkness are near." Then, the Blessed Virgin Mary appeared to me, sad and shedding tears. She said, "This great mantle which you see, is the expression of my mercy for covering sinners and for saving them. Men, instead, cover themselves with even more filth, and do not want to confess their real faults. Therefore, the justice of God will pass over the sinful world to purify humanity for so many sins, openly committed and hidden, especially those which corrupt youth. In order to save souls, I wish that there be propagated in the world the consecration to the Immaculate Heart of Mary, mediatrix of men, devoted to the mercy of God, and the Queen of the universe. The world will be once more afflicted with great calamity, with bloody revolutions, with great earthquakes, with famines, with epidemics, with fearful hurricanes, and with floods from rivers and seas. But if men do not return to God, purifying fire will fall from the heavens, like snowstorms, on all peoples, and a great part of humanity will be destroyed. No longer do men speak according to the true spirit of the gospel. The immorality of the times has reached a peak. But men do not listen to my motherly warnings, so the world must soon be purified. Russia will march upon all the nations of Europe, particularly Italy, and will raise her flag over the dome of St. Peter's. Italy will be severely tried by a great revolution, and Rome will be purified in blood for its many sins, especially those of impurity. The flock is about to be dispersed and the Pope must suffer greatly. The only valid means for placating divine justice is to pray and do penance, returning to God with sincere sorrow for the faults committed, and then the chastisement of divine justice will be mitigated by mercy. Humanity will never find peace, if it does not return to my Immaculate Heart as Mother of Mercy, and Mediatrix of men, and to the heart of my Son Jesus. Good Friday, 1960. The Blessed Virgin Mary speaks. How youth lives in perdition. How many innocent souls find themselves enwrapped in a chain of scandals. The world has become as a flooded valley, overflowing with filth and mud. Some of the most difficult trials of divine justice are yet to come, before the deluge of fire. I, for a long time, have advised men in many ways, but they do not listen to my maternal appeals, and they continue to walk the paths of perdition. But soon terrifying manifestations will be seen, which will make even the most obdurate sinners tremble. Great calamities will come upon the world, which will bring confusion, tears, struggles and pain. Great earthquakes will swallow up entire cities and countries, and will bring epidemics, famine, and terrible destruction, especially where the sons of darkness are, that is, the pagan, anti-God nations. In these tragic hours, the world has need of prayers and penance, because the Pope, the priests, and the Church are in danger. If we do not pray, Russia will march upon all of Europe, and particularly upon Italy, bringing much more ruin and havoc. Hence the priests must be in the front line of defense of the Church, by example and sanctity in life, for materialism is breaking forth in all nations and evil prevails over good. The rulers of the people do not understand this, because they do not have the Christian spirit. In their blindness, do not see the truth. In Italy, some leaders like rapacious wolves in sheep's clothing, while calling themselves Christians, open the door to materialism, and, fostering dishonest actions, will bring Italy to ruin, but many of them, too, will fall in confusion. Propagate the devotions to my Immaculate Heart, Mother of Mercy, Mediatrix of men, who believe in the mercy of God, and of the Queen of the universe. I will manifest my partiality for Italy, which will be preserved from the fire, but the skies will be covered with dense darkness, and the earth will be shaken by fearful earthquakes which will open deep abysses. Provinces and cities will be destroyed, and all will cry out that the end of the world has come. Even Rome will be punished according to justice for its many and serious sins, because here sin has reached its peak. Pray, and lose no time, lest it be too late, since dense darkness surrounds the earth and the enemy is at the doors. Feast of the Immaculate Heart of Mary, August 22, 1960. The Blessed Virgin Mary speaks. The hour of the justice of God is close, and will be terrible. Tremendous scourges are impending over the world, and various nations are struck by epidemics, famines, great earthquakes, terrific hurricanes, with overflowing rivers and seas, which bring ruin and death. If the people do not recognize in these scourges the warnings of divine mercy, and do not return to God with truly Christian living, another terrible war will come from the east to the west. Russia with her secret armies will battle America and will overrun Europe. The river Rhine will be overflowing with corpses and blood. Italy, also, will be harassed by a great revolution, and the Pope will suffer terribly. Spread the devotion to my Immaculate Heart, in order that many souls may be conquered by my love and that many sinners may return to my maternal heart. Do not fear, for I will accompany with my maternal protection my faithful ones, and all those who accept my urgent warnings, and they, especially by the recitations of my rosary, will be saved. Satan goes furiously through this disordered world, and soon will show all his might. Because of my Immaculate Heart, the triumph of light will not delay in its triumph over the power of darkness, and the world, finally, will have tranquility and peace. Good Friday, 1961. The Sorrowful Blessed Virgin Mary speaks. People pay no attention to my motherly warnings, and thus the world is falling headlong evermore into an abyss of iniquity. Nations shall be convulsed by terrible disasters, causing destruction and death. Russia, spurred on by Satan, will seek to dominate the whole world and, by bloody revolutions, will propagate her false teachings throughout all the nations, especially in Italy. The Church will be persecuted and the Pope and the priests shall suffer much. Sister Elena Aiello speaks. What a horrible vision I see. A great revolution is going on in Rome. They are entering the Vatican. The Pope is all alone, he is praying. They are holding the Pope. They take him by force. They knock him down to the floor. They are tying him. Oh God, they are kicking him. What a horrible scene, how dreadful. Our Blessed Mother is drawing near. Like corpses those evil men fall down to the floor. Our Lady helps the Pope to his feet and, taking him by the arm, she covers him with her mantle saying, "Fear not." Flagstaffs, flying the red flag over St. Peter's Dome and elsewhere, collapse, and power is gone out of the clubs of those evil brutes. These atheists are ever shouting, "We don't want God to rule over us, we want Satan to be our master." Our Blessed Mother speaks again. My daughter, Rome will not be saved, because the Italian rulers have forsaken the divine light and because only a few people really love the Church. But the day is not far off when all the wicked shall perish, under the tremendous blows of divine justice.